Ever heard a story, one that just makes you wonder, what if? What if
Yeah.
it's true? Like those tales of creatures hiding out there just beyond the edge of the map.
Right.
Well, today we're diving deep into that world of mysteries, with George M. Eberhardt's Mysterious Creatures, a guide to cryptozoology.
Oh, this can be good.
Get ready to explore where myth meets reality, folks.
It's not just about Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster, though. Eberhardt's book, it's like this amazing roadmap.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, to the whole world of cryptozoology. And it reminds us that sometimes the unknown is a lot closer than we think.
Closer than we think, absolutely. Okay, so before we get totally lost in the shadows here, let's define things. What exactly are we talking about when we say cryptozoology?
Okay, so in the simplest terms, it's basically the search for animals that haven't been, let's say, officially recognized by science. But think of it less like, monster hunting and more like detective work. We're talking analyzing eyewitness accounts, local folklore, even those blurry photos and mysterious footprints.
So piecing together a puzzle, but with some really strange pieces, right?
Exactly.
And speaking of strange, Eberhardt's guide, it organizes these creatures into categories that, well, they range from the familiar to, honestly, the downright bizarre.
Yeah.
We're talking about giant hominids, sea monsters, freshwater monsters, even wild men. Creatures that really blur the line between human and, well, something else entirely.
And it's that blurring that I think makes cryptozoology so fascinating,
Oh, absolutely.
Take Wildmen, for example. These figures pop up all over the world. They're often right there in the cultural stories, the beliefs of different societies. It makes you wonder, are these creatures just myths? Or are they echoes of something real, something we just haven't quite figured out how to categorize yet?
Right. It's like Eberhard is saying, hey, there might be something to these stories. Let's dig a little deeper.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And one creature that really, I think, embodies that idea is the Abnoayu.
Yeah, no idea.
A wild man that's reported to live in the Caucasus Mountains.
Okay.
It's described as incredibly strong, covered in reddish-black hair. And there are even stories of a female Abnoayu, they called her Zana, who was supposedly captured and then lived on a farm, like integrating into the local community and, get this, even having children with humans.
Wait, hold on. Children with humans. Now that's where it gets really interesting. Is there any physical evidence to support these claims? Or is it all like anecdotal stories passed down?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it highlights a really key challenge in cryptozoology, separating fact from folklore.
Right.
In Xana's case, the skull of her son, Quit, has actually been studied.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and while some researchers see like a blend of modern and ancient features,
Okay.
others believe it falls within like the normal range of Homo sapiens.
So it's like we're trying to solve this mystery, but we only have like half the clues.
Yeah,
And even those might be misleading.
right.
It makes you wonder how often misidentification plays a role in these sightings.
Oh, way more often than you'd think. Eberhardt actually talks about this in the book, and he uses a really, really illustrative example, the furry lobster.
A furry lobster. Okay, you have to tell me more about this one.
So there were all these reports of this strange creature popping up matching that description, furry lobster.
Yeah.
And it caused quite a stir among the locals, right? But after a bit of investigating, it turned out the furry lobster was nothing more than, you ready for this? A common iguana.
Wow. Talk about a case of mistaken identity. I
Oh.
can't believe people were mistaking an iguana for a furry lobster.
I know, right? It sounds funny, but it makes a crucial point. What we expect to see, what we're ready to believe, it can drastically change how we see things, our perception, especially when we're dealing with something unfamiliar.
Yeah, that makes sense. But how does that play out when we're talking about, like, reports from different cultures?
Yeah.
Cultures with totally different ways of classifying animals and even just understanding the natural world. I mean,
Yeah.
what we call a bear in English might be something else entirely in another culture's understanding, right?
You've hit on a really critical aspect of cryptozoology there. It's not just about identifying species. It's about understanding completely different worldviews, right? Different ways of relating to the natural world as a whole. And it challenges us, It challenges us to acknowledge that our knowledge, even with all our scientific advances, is still incomplete.
It's a humbling thought, isn't it? The idea that there might be creatures out there that we haven't discovered yet simply because we haven't learned how to see them. But this is where Eberhardt's guide really shines, don't you think? It encourages us to embrace those different perspectives, to remain open to the possibility that there's just so much we don't know about the world around us.
Absolutely. And you know what? Eberhardt's work really reminds us that even now, with our smartphones and satellite imagery and all that, there are still huge areas of this planet that are basically unexplored.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And those unexplored places, they could be hiding secrets that totally challenge how we understand, like biology, evolution.
Oh, totally. It's like, you know how there are all those nature documentaries? And every other week they're discovering some new species of insect or like a deep sea fish.
Right.
Makes you wonder what LSE is out there, just hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to find it.
And that's where that detective work of cryptozoology comes in, right? We're talking about scrutinizing those blurry photos, analyzing those weird footprints, and trying to figure out, are we looking at a case of someone getting tricked or a hoax? Or could this be something totally new?
Well, and Eberhardt, he talks a lot about critical thinking, right?
Oh, yeah.
Especially with eyewitness accounts. He says things like cultural context, language barriers, even just the lighting when someone saw something.
Oh, can change things.
Can totally change what people report.
Exactly. And a perfect example is how different cultures, how they interpret the idea of like wild men or hairy humanoids.
Okay.
These creatures, they're usually associated with, forests, mountains, those kind of remote spots. But they pop up in the folklore of societies all over the world. So are we always talking about the same thing, or are we taking all these distinct interpretations, different cultures, and trying to like force them all into one box? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. It's like, what's that saying? One man's trash is another man's treasure.
Right.
What one culture sees as a scary monster, another might think of as like a spirit, something to be respected even.
Exactly. You got it. And that's what I love about cryptozoology, It's not just about making a list of creatures. It's about how we see things, how cultures and beliefs play into it all. It's about humans and the natural world all mixed together.
So it's almost like cryptozoology can teach us as much about ourselves as it can about like Bigfoot or whatever.
Yeah, precisely. It forces us to face our own biases, right? Makes us question what we think we know and just be open to the possibility that we don't have it all figured out, not even close.
It's a humbling thought, but it's also pretty exciting, right?
Yeah.
Knowing there's still so much out there to discover, so much we don't know.
And that sense of wonder, that thirst for knowledge, for the unknown, it's what drives scientists and those armchair cryptozoologists, everybody.
It makes you want to grab your hiking boots, head out into the wilderness,
Oh, no, right?
Though maybe pack a good camera, too. Just in case we find something amazing out there.
A camera and a healthy dose of skepticism.
Oh, good call.
Remember, Eberhardt says this over and over again. Extraordinary claims, they need extraordinary evidence.
It's finding that balance, right? Between like that thrill of what if and actually thinking critically about it.
Yeah.
And Eberhardt, I think he does that really well in this book.
He does.
He doesn't just dismiss the possibility that these creatures are out there, but he also says, hey, we need some solid evidence.
Exactly. And that's what makes cryptozoology so fascinating. It's like science, folklore, and just plain human curiosity all rolled into one.
It really is.
So it reminds us that even now our world is still full of mysteries and that we shouldn't be afraid to ask questions, even if they're hard to find.
Totally. It's like Eberhard is saying, go ahead, be curious, look at the world with fresh eyes. Even if we never find Bigfoot hanging out in the backyard.
Right. And honestly, maybe the most important thing we can learn from all of this, from cryptozoology, is to keep an open mind.
Because who knows? Maybe one day it'll be that blurry photo or that weird footprint that leads us to a discovery that changes, like, everything.
It just might. And even if it doesn't, that journey, just searching for answers, trying to understand, I think that's a reward in itself.
Totally.
So next time you hear some crazy story, something that makes you wonder, think about Eberhardt's book, okay?
I like it.
It's a good reminder that the world is a much stranger and more wonderful place than we usually give it credit for.